This is our third annual Cure Corridor event. And 2 years ago, we introduced you to the Cure Corridor, actually, through this event. And it's Scottsdale's geographic concentration of cutting-edge research and education, clinical trial activity, and world-class patient care. But let me first introduce some of my colleagues who are here with us today. And I think I've got this list complete at this point in time. But we have our Vice Mayor, David Smith, who's here with us this morning. And we have council members Cordy, Littlefield, and Millhaven with us here as well, if you could stand to be recognized. Also like to welcome State Representative and Health and Human Services Vice Chair, Heather Carter. I believe she's here with us today. And Scottsdale's own State Representative, Michelle Ugenti. So thank you all for being here. You know, I'd also like to thank our wonderful sponsors that made today possible, especially our title sponsor, Cigna, and our presenting sponsor, Scottsdale Business Development Forum. So thank you for making this all possible for us today. My mission for hosting this each year truly is to facilitate a collaborative environment for innovation, and that innovation is in thought, application, forward thinking, technologies, education, cure therapies, and efficiencies. This year's focus draws on a discussion based on the financial and venture capital findings of the bio-life science, clinical research, and pharmaceuticals, which will be addressed by our keynote speaker, Jonathan Fleming, President of Network for Excellence in Health Innovation, also known as NEHI, out of the Boston area. Now, I will tell you that I met Mr. Fleming a couple of years ago when we were in California on economic development for this given industry, and he was giving a speech at Pfizer. And I was so profoundly impacted by his words of wisdom and frankly, his consideration in the area that I definitely wanted to make sure that he got on an agenda for us. And I think he'll have some great things to share with you a little bit later on. Others like HonorHealth, NeoLight, CVS Health Systems, Imagination, and GoXtudio will share some of their own stories in a rapid-fire presentation that we'll have here as well. I won't monopolize our time today to discuss the recent advancements and developments here in Scottsdale, but I do want to mention just a couple. For example, the Mayo Medical School received its accreditation and state license for its Arizona branch campus here in Scottsdale recently. Orion Health announced its expansion of local operations and facilities, providing 800 new jobs. Ironwood Cancer and Research Center opened a new operations in the Cure Corridor. We're even educating a new generation of innovative thinkers, as evidenced by Avita Gupta, a Scottsdale-based high school student who won the prestigious BioGenius Award in the 2015 International Bioconference in Philadelphia. She is a bioinformatics researcher, and at 17 years old, developed an algorithm that makes it easier and quicker for computers to develop disease-cutting drugs. Translational Drug Development, or TD2, is planning an expansion of their clinical laboratories services for oncology and to support the mission to reduce the risk and uncertainty inherent in drug development processing. This year, were even more advances in treating pancreatic cancer through HonorHealth's Virginia G. Piper Cancer Center. Again, this is just a sampling of an amazing array of healthcare, bioscience, and information development that I could share with you. But at this time, let's get started with our rapid-fire panelists. And to facilitate that for us, let me introduce the Kimberly McDowell, the local GM for Theranos. We're so glad to have Theranos in Scottsdale SkySong and proud that last year's Cure Corridor event introduced them to the community and sparked a new legislation to empower the patient to make informed decisions about their health. So please help me welcome Kimberly McDowell.
Well, hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this year again at the Cure Corridor event, our third annual. As those of you that were here last year may know, we had our very own CEO, Elizabeth Holmes, here to do the keynote. So again, we're honored to be here this year, and certainly myself to facilitate what I hope will be an inspiring and riveting rapid-fire event. So I will give you a couple of the ground rules and then get to the exciting part as quick as possible in introducing our very innovative speakers that will sit on the panel up here today. So the rules. Each of our speakers has 7 minutes, and I'm told there's a buzzer up here, but they gave me a microphone, so I will be monitoring it closely, and they have 5 slides. But the point of the rapid fire presentation is to share an idea, a concept, or something within their individual organizations that they're contributing to what we now know as the Cure Corridor. As the mayor, highlighted, this Cure Corridor is more than just something we say or a concept. It is very much within the city of Scottsdale a real thing that we are here to learn about and that we are here to make sure we spread awareness about, with not only within our state, but within the United States. We look at the Cure Corridor as an opportunity to, of course, in the city of Scottsdale, care for individuals, but also to research cures that we can take to the, globally, to the rest of the world in the institutions that sit in our very own city. So, I would encourage you today as you're listening to these concepts, to these speakers, share the ideas that are happening right here around us, to think about just that, the cure. The cure that is happening in where we live, in, where we are patients, where we are experiencing healthcare every day in the city of Scottsdale. So, without further ado, let me move to and introduce our speakers to come up to the podium. Tom Sadvary from HonorHealth, our president and CEO of this local system, who is a great speaker. I've had the opportunity to listen to him recently, of course, and he will share with us some concepts that are growing within the HonorHealth system, where certainly everyone knows that care and research are coming together to meet the needs of the patients in this great city on a regular basis. So Tom, if you want to join us. And then Joe Hitt, if you would like to join us. So Joe is the CEO of GoXtudio, so an executive director of Wearable Robotics Association, recognized nationally as an expert in wearable technologies and human systems. And my good friend Shiva, if you'd like to join us up here. So Shiva is the co-founder and CTO of NeoLight, a medical device firm that develops incubators to cure jaundice in newborn babies. Welcome, Shiva. And then my table mate, Chris Hugh, if you'd like to join us. So Chris is the CEO of Systems Imagination Incorporated, the world's first knowledge evolution network company with the vision of developing industrial solutions to massively accelerate the evolution of scientific knowledge. So welcome. And then Dr. Jane Barlow, please join us. So Dr. Barlow is the Associate Chief Medical Officer for CVS Health. She leads a diverse team of physicians, pharmacists, and others to drive clinical strategy and development for CVS Caremark PBM services and CVS Health Enterprise initiatives. So, Tom, we are going to start with you today, if you would like to join me at the podium. What I'd like to let everyone know is to keep this exciting and engaging is throughout the presentations, if you could use your phones, I know we have them on silent, but use your phones to tweet to #CureCorridor, because throughout the presentations we'll be collecting the questions, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end, and we'll take that live feed to make sure that our great speakers have the opportunity to answer them. Tom, over to you.
Okay, so I'm first in line, so this will be rapid, and I'm not sure what the word fire means, but it'll be rapid. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here, looking at this Cure Corridor event, which is the third annual and I think likely to continue to develop in terms of size and scope. Very much supportive of the leadership that Mayor Lane and the City Council and city staff have provided. Certainly there's a business dimension of Cure Corridor, but what I want to talk to you today about is HonorHealth's efforts, past and future, relative to our quest towards curing and treating disease, most notably, but not excluded to just cancer. And I think most of you know that we launched a new brand, a new organization, HonorHealth, which is a combination of the legacy John C. Lincoln and Scottsdale healthcare organizations who had collectively served our communities for over 120 years. And our focus is on making healthy personal. We're locally, nonprofit, community-based. So being based in Scottsdale and being connected with various organizations is very, very important to us. And we're very, very proud of what we've done at the Virginia G. Piper Cancer Center and the HonorHealth Research Institute. So, again, our mantra is to make health personal, and it's important, obviously, relative to the research side because everyone's DNA is different and everyone's makeup relative to what they need to cure or prevent a disease is very important. I want to tell you a few stories here, and again, I'm here on behalf of not only our 11,000 employees, but specifically the men and women, physicians, clinicians, and support people in our research center who work tirelessly with others to help get these kinds of results. So there's a woman named Sandra who is next to Gail Jamieson from our research institute who was suffering from stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And due to some work that we did, she was told she had 60 days to live. And in February, she entered a clinical trial at HonorHealth Research Institute. And 1 year later, she's feeling good. And that's remarkable for someone with such a deadly cancer. And that's one reason that we're here today. Now, we consider ourselves leaders in the field at the Virginia G. Piper Cancer Center in all of these services that I will not list individually, but it ranges from genetics counseling and genetics engineering all the way to treating people with personal nurse navigators who can help people navigate through the often complex stream of healthcare needs that they have when they are faced with such a potentially deadly disease. Collaboration has been the fabric of HonorHealth, and we're delighted to have formed and developed partnerships locally with Mayo Clinic, with TGen, and other organizations, as well as some of the leading academic and research organizations really throughout the country and even to a certain degree internationally. And it's really, I think, a strength of the Cure Corridor as we look at liaisons that we can have between the organizations and among us that are in the Scottsdale, Phoenix area, as well as a catalyst for other partnerships really throughout the country. So, Dr. Von Hoff is pictured here, who is the founder and one of our key leaders of the Research Institute. And he has been leading our pancreatic and GI cancer research for many, many years. He helped form the partnerships with TGen, Mayo, et cetera. And 2 new therapies doubled the 1 to 2 year survival rate for pancreatic cancer just recently. And I think we all know that pancreatic cancer is one of the most deadly cancers, and that's one of the ones that we're tackling. And certainly partnerships and innovation is really critical to that effort. It's also delighted to announce that one of our partners in basic research, TGen, has been granted a $12 million amount of money from Stand Up to Cancer, which is a national funding effort for cancer. We are one of the few organizations in the country that have received this award 2 years in a row. And so we're delighted to have the funding and to have the support so that we're able to do the work that we do in trying to cure and treat cancer, most notably but not exclusively to pancreatic cancer. We're delighted to be part of this dream team, and again, looking with collaborative partnerships throughout the country to continue that effort. Now, we are impatient in our quest to cure and treat cancer. And we hope that with partnerships that we've established and with helping to be a catalyst with the Cure Corridor, that we can really help increase the speed to market of cancer-treating drugs at HonorHealth. Again, as a community-based organization with 5 hospitals and several ambulatory sites throughout the Phoenix, Scottsdale area, we're able to apply a lot of the life-saving drugs and clinical trials to our patients in a very rapid fashion. And working with the FDA on fast-track approval so that we can get these new drug therapies either for pancreatic cancer, basal cell carcinoma, lung cancer, et cetera, to our clinicians and to our patients with remarkable speed. But as much as we've accomplished, our researchers at the HonorHealth Research Institute are humbled by the fact that there's still a lot more to do. We're excited about the developments that we have in front of us. We're excited about strengthening the current partnerships we have with local organizations and leading research centers throughout the country. And we're really enthusiastic about the role that the organizations within Cure Corridor can play to help us achieve that goal. According to my watch, I have 58 seconds to go. So I'm going to defer that time to my colleagues. Thank you.
Joe, if you want to come on up to the podium. Great job, Tom. Very much appreciate the extra time. So everyone, Mr. Joe Hitt.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Still morning, so good morning, everyone. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you. Before I begin, I just want to thank Christian Green back there and Danielle for inviting me. And I want to congratulate the mayor. This is fantastic. And so it's great. And it's also very nice to kind of meet Kimberly. I guess my #1 message is we need the leadership team in the city and the folks that are sitting in here. We need your help. We need your help to turn the Cure Corridor and the city of Scottsdale into a hub for wearable robotics. And I'll tell you what wearable robotics is shortly. I'm here representing 2 organizations that I helped to co-found. First is GoXtudio, which is a tech startup, VC funded. So we're talking about investment, innovation. I think it applies there as well. The second organization is the Wearable Robotics Association. It is the first and only trade association globally on behalf of the wearable robotics business. Before coming here, I spent 20 years in the military, so I fully understand what rapid fire means. Usually that means duck. Before coming here, though, I had the pleasure of spending 3.5 years at DARPA. Anybody know what DARPA is? Great. Usually everybody on the East Coast knows, and most of the people on the West Coast do not. But it really is the organization that did invent the internet. True, that's right. We also invented GPS and humanoid robotics, UAVs, and so on. And I had the pleasure of leading many of those programs. Some of the most exciting, I can't tell you. I would have to literally kill you after I told you, so we'll keep it at that.
LS3 power on. LS3 follow tight.
So we developed that because soldiers carry more than 100 pounds of gear when they are walking through the woods, and we wanted something that could follow them and carry their load. We took this to the mountains in California, the Marine Corps. We went all over the country testing this device, plus many, many others, to include a wearable robotics program called Wearable, which was the DoD's largest program of its kind that I had the pleasure of conceptualizing and running. That's one of the reasons why I'm passionate about wearable robotics. And I would tell you that, DARPA started this idea about 20 years ago, and now we can sit back because there's just incredible growth in the area. And I think that bullet point number one, that more than I do, that the population demographics is changing and the expectations of them are changing, which fuels wearable robotics. The other is the foundational technologies are here today. And I'm not just talking about robotic technologies like motor control or actuation. I'm talking about the stuff that's in your pocket today. So it's that processing efficiency, storage density. It is the 64 gigabytes of storage that you have in your phone, the quad-core processor, 3 gigahertz, that can literally blast through and compute the things that we would need computed to cause this wearable robot to move, to the ubiquitous connectivity that's all over the place. Soon will be in walls and lamps, on you, on the floor, on the toilet, on and on and on. Here's what's surprising for me after having spent 20 years in the government and now moving as the executive director of this association, visiting Shanghai 3 weeks ago. I was incredibly surprised by the activity in wearable robotics in Asia and Europe. They are killing us. They have the lead. And that is one of the reasons why we started this association, is to kind of help become the leaders in terms of standardization, in terms of purpose, in terms of integration, interoperability, cybersecurity, on and on and on. The other kind of is the public curiosities here today. Look at the Call of Duty game, and you've got this steampunk exoskeleton pack, and you've got Ant-Man or Asylum. So we started the Wearable Robotics Association. Our vision is to globally link. And the reason it has to be global is because there's not as much going on here in the US. We have to globally link small businesses, enable them to reach out to buyers who are Exxons, the FedEx, the Boeings. And to do that, we have this inaugural conference. It's going to start it off, WearCon 16. It's going to be February. It's going to be at the Arizona Grand. We already have Intel and a bunch of other sponsors. IEEE is our technical sponsor. The stuff at the bottom left are the types of systems you will see there. And the organizations that are already coming, you can see on the right. This is fantastic for a first-year organization with no proof of success. The reason is because wearable robotics is on fire. I would ask that you go to the wearablerobotics.com website and consider coming, consider supporting us, consider helping us to be the hub here in Scottsdale. The other organization is GoXtudio. This is our tech startup. Here we try to understand the human first and foremost, and then we apply the minimal technology needed to enhance them or mitigate their injury. We do that in recreation. We do that in quality of life. We do that in performance and health. So what you saw was a running model, an open sim model, 94 muscles actuated at the exact right time to cause that locomotion. We looked to see what are the joint torques and forces, and then we developed technologies like the video you just saw where we actuated the hip to cause this person who cannot run a 5-minute mile, run a 5-minute mile. One of the first products coming out of GoXtudio, though, is not something that fancy. It's really, we looked at one of the problems that I have a problem with, which is I just ran the P.F. Chang, then I ran the Glendale Marathon. Now I've got an IT ban issue. Even though I'm registered for the next P.F. Chang, boom, there's $160 gone. What was interesting, though, when we looked at this problem is there's actually 40 million of us runners here in the US. That's about a 300% increase over the last 20 years. If I ask the question, I'll bet you half of you will raise your hands and say you're a runner. Of that 40 million, 20 million are race finishers, and 3 million of you are half marathon, marathon, or triathletes. You are 80% college educated, affluent, 35 years old, 2/3 female. So that picture is the average half marathon, marathon runner. She spends $1,200 a year, 5 hours per week, 225 days a year training. And what I would say is they train incorrectly because a quarter of them become injured. And the key reason is the types of health Fitbits and things that you use, in my mind, are inadequate in terms of measuring your fitness, your recovery, your training load. If I ask one of you runners today, how fit are you? You will say, I feel pretty fit. And then if I ask you the question, how fit were you last month? You would say, pretty fit. And what we're proposing is to develop a system that allows us to exactly measure your fitness, the intensity of your training, very accurate energy expenditure models, and we measure different injury parameters to help mitigate injury and enhance your performance. In other words, we're trying to balance your performance level and increase in fitness with injury probability by applying and regulating your training through the use of metrics. I have no idea how I'm doing on time, but...
I was giving you the nice smile.
Okay, gotcha. It's better than a bzzz.
About to stand up.
Okay, well, thank you. If you have any questions, please, joe.hitt@GoXtudio.com. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Joe. Woo, lost a shoe on the way up. No, we're definitely well on our way to discussing care, innovation, research, and why we're here, The Cure. So I'd like to invite Shiva to the podium. Grab my shoe.
Morning, friends. I naturally get this static, so yeah. It's an honor to be here. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Christian Green, and thanks, Kimberly, for not messing up my name. We are relatively new to the Cure Corridor event, and we need your help with NeoLight to promote personal and home healthcare using technology to the next level. I'm here to share a small story about NeoLight, why we started and what is our next goals, and how can we contribute to the Cure Corridor or the American market. Not every problem requires complex engineering solution. I mean, at times, awareness can be a great medical tool. Personalized and point-of-care home treatment will see a big boom in the medical industry in the future. Fortunately, I started my career as a medical designer, developing warmers, incubators, ventilators, and world-class blind aid devices. Everything went perfectly in my life until one day, my manager asked me to do clinical trials on the product that I designed. It's called a medical warmer. In the first attempt, I terribly failed. Weeks later, I did my second attempt. The baby got treated. And there was this beautiful smile from the mother's face. I still remember the day. Today, we live in a world with billions of connected devices. As Joe stated, we have quad-core processor with all fingerprint touch technology, everything in our pockets. 15 years back, if I had told my friend that I'm going to find my dream partner online, people would have either thought I'm crazy or lazy. But now, we socialize in Facebook. We meet professionals in LinkedIn. And we also have 3D printers at some homes. Technology has reached a pinnacle, and we need to go along with that shift. So in the same hospital, the same story. So I was next room to the mother's room. I saw a bunch of babies like you guys with a light from the top. So I thought a mother was lucky enough to give birth to 4 or 5 babies all at once. Wow, that's great. So I asked a doctor nearby, and he said, those are babies from different mothers getting treated for jaundice. And the probability of those babies getting saved is very low. The hospitals did not have the money to buy the equipments. Even though if they bought few equipments, those equipments are not up to the modern care. So that day, I thought to myself that I should do something to the community. So I came to the US and proposed my idea to ASU. Actually, I think I should press this button to move the slides over. I think I missed this point, the home healthcare. Healthcare is a $1 trillion market, but only 3% of the pie is being contributed to the home care. The cost of treating a patient in the hospital is much more significant compared to treating it in the house. It's just 8% of the total cost in the hospital. And if you look at this slide, US is relatively an unexplored market for home health care. Apart from California and Texas, not much of the states have invested or established more in terms of home health care. So this made me think that the home health care and the simple and the effective treatment that the community needs has to be served in a proper manner. So I formed a very beautiful and a very effective team. So after I met the baby, I completely lost about the money-minded nature. So I became more human. That's why I joined few management people to get the company with all the money running and get this project to reach the babies. So we started NeoLight with 2 core values. One is simple design. The next is point of care treatment. Simple means affordable, it is easily serviceable, and it can be reproduced anywhere. And next step is we want to deliver treatment right at your doorsteps. I mean, why do we want to go to hospitals and stay there after delivering the baby or any disease? So treatment should be at your house, like how 3D printers are at your house. It's sooner that we can imagine a day where all the treatments can be done right at your place. We started with the help of ASU, and now we are supported by CEI, Children's Hospital LA, and some other big hospitals in and around Arizona. So with the help of all these guys, we developed a disruptive technology to treat jaundice effectively with an affordable way. And we proposed it to hospitals in the Arizona, including Scottsdale Health Center and all the dignity groups. So they gave a comment that, Shiva, it is not only a problem in the developing markets, it is also a problem in the developed markets as well, like USA. We have more advanced mobile in our pocket, but the medical treatment is not as advanced as it should be. It is not as modern. So then we categorize our device into two lines. One is NeoLight SkyLife, which has all the premium features to treat jaundice in newborn babies in the US, and NeoLight SunLife, which can run on solar power for developing markets. Our device can actually replace 3 devices in the hospital with just 1 device, and can have an OpEx saving of more than $5,000 per device per hospital per year. When we did some statistics, we found that 10 babies are getting affected every minute, which is like 15,000 babies per day, or 5.6 newborn babies or young generation every year. As Meglis MacArthur, who quotes, failure can be summed up in 2 words in any language: too late. Now that we know the importance of home care, importance of a newborn baby, and time, I don't want to be too late. So please join hands to support NeoLight and promote home health care and get this technology in the hands of people who are in need. Thank you.
Thanks, Shiva. Chris, I'll invite you to the podium now. I just want to remind everyone, as you're listening and enjoying your lunch, to hashtag CureCorridor. Make sure to tweet any questions you have, so again, we can have a riveting Q&A session. That's where our last two speakers are done.
So thank you for the opportunity to speak today. We're really excited to be part of the CureCorridor community. There are companies, healthcare institutions, business leaders here, and I think it's just amazing looking over the past 3 years at how quickly this has grown. It really speaks to Mayor Lane's office's leadership as well as the opportunity in front of us. And what I'm going to tell you about today is how we at Systems Imagination see a tremendous opportunity to harness big data, and we'll talk about that, to truly personalized medicine. So Systems Imagination is a 2-year-old startup, homegrown here in Arizona. My co-founder over there, Spiro Moussess at Table 9, and I decided we should marry this amazing research that he was doing at the time at TGen about how to make knowledge valuable and how to make it actionable with the tremendous market opportunity that exists to transform healthcare with big data analytics. Now, after 2 years, we're about a dozen people. We have MBAs, PhDs, IT experts, and we have a world-renowned advisory and clinical expertise that really helps the company be the most innovative venture in the Valley when it comes to the intersection of IT and healthcare. Our mission is to take our technology and our core expertise and help our customers find and leverage the insights in their big data. And we do that by aggregating all of the information that's out there in the public about the biology of disease, the drugs and how they act, and the patients and what they suffer from. And we use our highly specialized knowledge to perform, analyze, and interpret data from new diagnostic tools like genomics. You heard about it earlier today. And we create these databases of that content, and we integrate all that information across those databases. What comes out at the end is what we term a knowledge base, and what we do is knowledge engineering. We help the data evolve from what it is today, which is just massive amounts of information, into the very small amounts of insights that you can pull out of that information to make it actionable. So we've been successful so far in doing all those things that are critical to making a startup succeed. You know, we've got the right people, we've got a real market opportunity, we've got technology, we've got some barriers to others doing what we do. But the challenges that we face are the same challenges that others in this room face. And it's really how do you take that initial growth and continue it on an exponential curve? How do you continue to hire the right people? How do you address the market opportunity? How do you continue to develop your assets? And so I wanted to just spend a quick moment to talk about big data, because this will explain why we think we know what we need to do, and we hope that this community helps support that. I think everybody knows what big data is, but in healthcare and life sciences, in our industry, there aren't really very good, clear, simple examples of how value has come out of analysis of big data. In other industries, financial markets, when you can tell whether the market's going to go up or down, or economies perform, or jobs created or lost, sure, there's an immediate economic value, a dollar value to analyzing big data. But in healthcare, that's not necessarily the case. People talk about 3 V's when they talk about big data. They talk about velocity, they talk about volume, and they talk about variety. That's how they define big data. I'm actually going to add 2 more V's to that acronym, or that, whatever it is, mnemonic. Value, and the other is validation. And so I think some of you have seen some of this before, but just to make the point, the top left of this slide is a panel that shows you that Moore's law is, since the 60s, what has driven everything that's electronic today. And we can all recognize the immediate technological transformation of our lives as human beings by electronics. That's that little line that's going in a kind of linear fashion. The green line is actually the cost of sequencing over the past 15 years since the first human genome was sequenced, and that took 10, 15 years and $3 billion. Today, one human genome can be done for $1,400. All right, now the average CAT scan, if you look online at HonorHealth, I think it's cheaper than this, but I think it's about $1,000. So the reality is everyone in this room in the next 5 to 10 years is going to have their whole genome sequenced because it's going to be that cheap. But we really still to this day don't really know how to validate the information that comes out of that. We have some inklings. We know some biology, but we don't know the full story. We can't prove that for every person who has a disease, from their genome, we can define exactly what treatment will work on exactly what patient for exactly what disease. And that's really the challenge. And the bottom left is an example of, thanks to Booz Allen, kind of how adoption of technologies occurs in medicine. And I want to say that I'm really encouraged that here in the Valley, we have 3 of those things nailed. We've got testing technology from companies like Theranos. We're going to provide the bioinformatics here. And physician adoption at places like HonorHealth. That's critical. And we've got that here in the Valley. So let me just give you 2 quick slides on what it is that we look at every day and why this is important. This is a way to look at genomes. It's just one way. It's a very, very high level view. This represents 2 genomes from the same patient. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that there are differences between those 2 panels. Actually, we have a rocket scientist at our table right there, Chell. He can tell us if he sees something different. These are the guys who put a spacecraft over near Pluto to give us pictures of Pluto. So I don't know if you see anything there, Chell, but what I see is there are big differences, huge. This is across every chromosome in the human genome. This is normal tissue on the left from a patient, and then on the right is tumor tissue from that same patient. All right, so how are you going to see what's going on here? Well, you got to get more granular. And if you look, I don't know how it's coming out on the screen there, I can't see it, but there's a chromosome 17, and there's a certain region of chromosome 17 that we're going to zoom in on real quick. This is a famous gene, BRCA1. Okay, this is showing exons and introns. And up here at the very top, it's very hard for me to point without pointing, is a region where there are mutations in a particular exon of that gene. All right, this is the gene that Angelina Jolie made her decision on. She had a particular mutation in that gene, and she decided to take action because we know that with that mutation and family history of cancer, she would have a very strong likelihood of developing breast or ovarian cancer. But it's not 100%. That's the thing. She might have been in that 5% that didn't get it, right? But all of us today are in the situation of, because of our healthcare, such great healthcare in the Western societies, we're going to live long enough to have most people in this room, we're going to see cancer at some point. 1 out of 2 males, 1 out of 3 females, right? What's fascinating about cancer and why we want to focus on it is not just the economic value, which is at top there, but when you look at the studies that are coming out today, this is a most recent study from a group in San Diego, the vast majority of cancers can be studied molecularly and patients can be put on the right drug. It's just our ability to actually sieve through all that data and find the right mutation to identify the right drug. And people like Dr. Dan Von Hoff at HonorHealth, they're the ones who are doing it right now here in the Valley. And that's what's totally exciting to me. So I'm going to leave you with the last 2 slides. I know I'm over by a minute or 2 here. The first is we're really, again, excited because we're seeing more and more big data. It's going to be 1 million genomes from one project in the US. China's sequencing 1 billion people as we speak, okay? That's going to be a national asset. What's the US going to do about it? What are the companies going to do about it? We're one of over 140 different companies doing genome data analysis, but we're here in the Valley. We're the only one that's doing it right now today here in the Valley as a company. What we need is a collaborative ecosystem, local government support, which we have thanks to Mayor Lane, and I think talent. I mean, the ASU has 82,000 students. You know, they grant degrees in this, but where do they go? And we'd love to see them stay here and work for companies like Systems Imagination, because we can do things here that we can't do in San Francisco or Boston. we can fly under the radar and we can truly be pioneers like how a lot of our previous generation came out to Arizona. That's I think, what we could focus on here in Arizona. So finally, I'll just end with pointing to the table number 9 over there. Some of our guests are listed. It's about the interdisciplinary nature of how to bring science, technology, and all that knowledge to bear in medicine. And the folks over there at table 9 are really experts in their field, and we're honored to be here. So thank you very much for the invitation. Love to talk to you later. Thank you.
Dr. Barlow, welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about innovations in the pharmacy space. So it's hard to drive around Scottsdale without seeing a CVS pharmacy on many, many corners. And you all probably know us best by our pharmacies and our minute clinics, where we provide an extension of primary care to the community in a little bit different format. But we also have specialty pharmacies where we help to manage the delivery of the medications, but the management of the use of the medications for members who use specialty drugs, which are typically infused drugs or injectable drugs or drugs that need special handling. But we also have a pharmacy benefits management arm where we cover over 60 million lives throughout the country in helping to manage the benefits of those individuals. So you can imagine, with all of those different assets, we have millions and millions of data points that can help give us insights into what works and what doesn't work in healthcare, and specifically in the pharmacy space. And so as we look at, our clinical strategy, it's really about reinventing that frontline interface with your pharmacists, because we know that individuals interact with their pharmacist and their pharmacy more than any other provider in the healthcare continuum. So we have we think, an important role and really an obligation to do that well and to continue to advance that front. We have a research institute that takes these millions of data points and provides insights into where the problems are and where the opportunities are, but then also on the back end, as we try different things, what actually works. So we take those insights and we leverage technology through all of the different touch points that we might have with a patient to try to optimize the coordination of a care around pharmacy and how drugs are delivered and used by a member. And we think by doing that, we can improve the counseling and support that you receive around drugs for the member. So why is this important? Well, probably the area that we spend the most time focusing on is adherence. And adherence means, your doctor's prescribed a drug, are you taking it, and are you taking it as it's prescribed so you get the maximum benefit? So when you look at this data, which is data that we produce in conjunction with our relationship with Harvard, you find that the investment in drugs, which is illustrated in the green here, which is money you're spending, saves money on the medical spending and then also productivity of individuals measured by absenteeism and disability. So there's a tremendous return on investment for ensuring that people are adherent to their chronic medications. So as we've taken these insights, what we've done is created a predictive adherence index. And what that does is to really look at the different trajectories, if you will, of why a patient or how a patient becomes non-adherent to their medications. So the top line, the white, which is mark number 1, it shows you where we want people to be, always adherent to their medications. But the reality is there's a lot of different ways that people fall into non-adherence. So if you look at the pink line, which is number 6, many people drop off after their first fill. They fill a drug and they never come back for their second refill. There's a lot of different versions in between. What we do with this predictive analytics tool is to identify where people fit on this trajectory, which helps us to know when we should outreach to those members, what the nature of the outreach should be, and what the duration of the outreach should be. And so we have this mapped really for every one of these curves. So then we've actually taken that a step further. So the left-hand circle actually represents everybody that's not adherent. But we know that there's a population of folks that we call vulnerable patients, and these are the patients that are likely to have a doubling in their medical expenses in the next year. And when you take those people and map them using pharmacy claims and other information that we have into a predictive analytics tool focused on vulnerable patients, we call it the Vulnerable Patient Index, you can actually identify what kind of major bucket they're going to fall into in terms of the problems that they're likely to have around their medications. And that could be an adherence issue. It could be a safety issue around the dosing, too high, too low of their drug, or interaction of drugs for people that have very complex regimens. Or it could just be the complex nature of their condition. And, you know, we see people 12, 20, you know, and more drugs that they're taking all at the same time. And understanding how those all work and work together can be very difficult for patients to know. So this is the way of sort of identifying and really targeting our interventions so they can be delivered when the patient needs it, how they need it, and really focus in with more precision on how we can help address the true root problem. So it's not enough then to identify, but we also have to intervene. And we have lots of interventions in place. This slide is really meant to illustrate some of the things that we're working on in terms of piloting. So if you think about that patient with multiple medications, how does an elderly patient try to figure out, you know, opening 12 different bottles to get their medications for their morning? Which ones do I take in the afternoon? What might I need in the evening? We can package all those so they don't have to think about that. Here's my morning pills, here's my afternoon pills, here's my evening pills. And they can just receive those at the time that they need them, and it's more intuitive for them. So we've also have platforms around digital growth and how we can leverage people's use of smart devices so that they can help manage their care. The point of all of this is that we have these pilots, and then we take those pilots and feed that information into the insights to drive sort of the next generation of improvements in pharmacy care. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Barlow. So now we get to the fun part. We get to have the questions that you have submitted right in front of me here through your tweets throughout the program. And I have a couple that were handed to me, so we can ask those and have our esteemed panel here answer them for you live. So first, let's start with Joe. How will wearable robotics transform human capabilities?
Is this on? Hello?
Should be.
I'm good. So last year there were 50 commercial companies doing wearable robotics globally, we think. This year there's about 100. Next year there will be 200. The year after that there will be 400 globally. And all of them with a bunch of smart people using the technologies that I described are working on problems that you have. And that will be available to you. It will enable the elderly to walk the second mile. It will literally enable somebody who can't walk. And so we know it will transform human capability. And it could even be in subtle ways. For example, subthreshold stochastic resonance, so vibrations you can't feel to enhance your balance or your proprioception. Could be the closed loop feedback that's provided to you. So there are just so many things out there, so many capabilities. My question back to you, or my thought back to you is, you can't afford not to learn about it and use it in your organizations. I'm sorry, that was a double negative.
It's okay. So let me move to Chris. So we talked about making big data actionable. I mean, fascinating to listen to you speak. So can you, relative to the Cure Corridor, can you give us a feel for what's your vision for the first step in which the Cure Corridor and everything it entails could harness big data?
Right. Hello? Oh, good. I don't have the little...
We're with you.
Yeah, so I think, like I was mentioning, we have the raw ingredients of how to transform medicine with technology. So it's no longer a barrier of the cost of sequencing. It's no longer a barrier of the knowledge being out there and having access to it. And it's no longer a barrier of physicians adopting it or researchers being able to study it and relay their findings. At this point, I think we have two main things to think about overcoming. One of which I was really encouraged to see for Theranos, strongly supporting a patient's right to get tested. That was enormous. I mean, we have right now all of these right to try laws that are being passed state by state because the federal government is unwilling to take up the challenge. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that all the states are going to pass some form of it. And it's because each of us has a right to have a better life as protected under the Constitution. So if my life will be improved by having my own genome sequenced, and then if I get sick, to be able to leverage that knowledge in care with my doctor, of course, then that's the thing that we need to support, both on a legislative front as well as on a regulatory front. So, we kind of don't like to talk about the FDA much because I think part of the problem is they move at a pace that is slower than patients want them to go. So for Cure Corridor in particular, I think it's those kinds of demonstration projects that we would love to do with Theranos and HonorHealth and working with great institutions like TGen. If we could put things together that really captured the imagination, that's why we're called systems imagination, of the world, and saying, Scottsdale is the place. It's where this particular disease, like what Dan Von Hoff has done for pancreatic cancer, is solved with big data. That's where I think, we really have a big leadership opportunity.
Appreciate the comment, and great example of the Cure Corridor, and that conversation relative to that bill started here last year. So it's been an exciting year since, and this event and what's occurring within the Cure Corridor will certainly lay the groundwork for the future of not only Scottsdale, but the rest of the country. So appreciate that. Tom, HonorHealth is unique in that as a locally owned nonprofit community health system, they make sizable investments in research. Can you talk about why research is an important component of your strategic vision and what that means to patients?
Well, first of all, what it means to patients is to have quicker access to leading innovative treatments that are either going to cure or prevent a disease. And it's part of our strategic vision because, we believe that, again, making healthy personal has a service perspective, but it also has a strong clinical perspective in that we are able to look at the individual's needs, whether through a nurse navigator to help them understand what sort of clinical or social resources they might need to get through a cancer. But the research is really what allows us to, I think, improve their clinical outcomes. And again, it's just inherently connected to our strategic plan and strategic vision as an organization. And we've done it for many, many years and many decades, but until we got Dr. Von Hoff and others to, and then some landmark grants to help us for seed money, that's when we were able to really, I think, hyper speed the efforts that we've developed.
Thank you. Now, I had the distinct pleasure of touring the Piper Center recently and just learning about what's been done there and the research. We were discussing this morning prior to the event that is one piece that Cure Corridor really does stand for, and the awareness around the research that occurs here, needs to improve in it because it's phenomenal. So appreciate that. Dr. Barlow, can you give us an example of how you improve medication adherence at the CVS retail pharmacies?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we use data to develop insights. And we have a platform that we call a health engagement engine. And what that does is take those insights to really identify opportunities for members. And as that member touches one of our sites, so we'll use the example of a retail pharmacy, that pharmacist actually is flagged right in their work stream that this individual, let's use the example, has an issue around adherence to a specific medication. That pharmacist then can take the time, and these typically are 5 to 7 minute discussions with the patient, to talk to them around any issues they're having with the medication, try to get at the barriers to their adherence, and to reinforce the need to take the drug. We can do that in a very efficient and effective manner, and we've proven that improves adherence to those medications. What's really cool is we can use that same platform not just to push messages around what we're interested in necessarily from a pharmacy level, but we work with our health plan partners and with provider organizations to take in messages that they're interested in and to push those messages out. So could be as simple as, it's time for your flu shot, right? Or it could be something like you're late to get your eye exam for a diabetic patient. And so we can be a facilitator through our touch points using this engagement engine to drive improvements in the healthcare system really for all of the different aspects.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So I will move to Shiva. We had some conversation, or ASU came up, as an opportunity for research and, student employment and whatnot. Can you give us a feel for, when you look at the startup movement and, organizations in Arizona specifically, is the millennial student equipped for that environment?
That's a good question. That's a fear that everybody in the NeoLight team had when we started the company. We all thought that money is one of the key factors to run a company. But here we found out resources. We run into professors, we can run into research labs, tech shops, and we don't have to pay taxes. And so we also learned that the success of an entrepreneur or success behind a company is determined by how determined you are and about not giving up. So we used all those mentors, resources, and everybody which people with white hair does not have. So and then we made it. So I would say students has all the collaborative opportunities to move quicker than what other people cannot.
Appreciate that. Thank you. I'm seeing a ton of more questions come in. Some are fantastic, and want to let everyone know that if you've been tweeting or have additional questions, our speakers will be available after. We also do plan to ask some of these questions and then post them to the Economic Development Twitter page, Facebook, using all our social platforms. So keep the questions coming throughout the presentation, but we want to make sure that we move on and be respectful of your time today. So before we move over to our keynote speaker, I would like to thank our distinguished speakers here today. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Cure Corridor, and we will learn about this every year when we're here. So as we transition, it is again my distinct pleasure to welcome Joan Kerber-Walker, President and CEO of AZ Bio, to introduce our keynote speaker. Joan? Sorry.
pretty inspiring, isn't it? When we look at and when we listen to the things that you just heard, there's a theme, and the theme is one that may not be apparent right away. They talked about health. They talked about innovation. They talked about care. We talked about adherence. We talked about mobility. But underneath all of that is one very simple and very, very important concept: time. Because time is precious. If you have waited for a loved one to get well, if you waited or hoped for another day, another hour, another year with a loved one, there is nothing more precious than time. You also heard that it takes a long time to bring life science innovation forward. You heard that the regulatory pathway takes a long time to make sure that treatments are safe and effective and that we can pay for them. Time is precious. To move things forward faster takes money. It's the old seesaw, right? And we all know it in whatever business we have. If I have more money, I can add more people on a big project, and it takes less time. Is that if I have less money, I move slowly. I don't move as quickly. That's why Mayor Lane had the foresight to go to California and to meet with leaders and to meet Jonathan Fleming. That's why leaders across the state of Arizona are all working together, not just life science leaders, but leaders from almost every industry, to address the issue of access to capital. That's why next week we will see the CEO of a company that was born, developed, and exited here in Arizona for $600 million on stage with a member of the board of directors of CVS Health and one of the leading researchers in the state, Dr. Du Bois, just up Scottsdale Road from here, talking about the importance of access to capital. We don't have enough here, which means that those companies that you heard from, those researchers that Tom Sadvary talked about, spend a lot of time on airplanes chasing money. And when they say, we need your support, what they're really saying is, we need your money. Because time is money. And the innovation that comes forward may make the difference in more time for that person that you love in the future. So with that, I want to give you just a little bit of insight on our keynote speaker. So Jonathan Fleming is the president and treasurer of NEHI, which is the Network for Excellence in Health Innovation. Jonathan's been in the venture capital world for almost 3 decades. In fact, 3 decades. Okay, it turned over. When you look at the road from discovery to development to delivery, it's like medicine. It's not an exact science, it is a practice. And you're about to hear from one of the leading practitioners in what it takes to understand how to fund life-saving and life-changing innovations along the path from discovery to development to delivery. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jonathan Fleming.
Good afternoon, Scottsdale. Mayor Lane, members of the City Council, it has been really just a pleasure to get to know your city and in particular to get to know some of the people in your city. I feel like after an introduction like that, I had to just sit down and kind of think about it. But the fact is the mayor did call me several weeks ago and he wanted to talk to me about this speech. And I thought that was pretty different and pretty interesting. Typically, the mayor doesn't come and call you up and tell you what he wants you to talk about. And so I thought he was going to talk to me about economic development and things that he should do to promote economic development. And I started talking about maybe taking care of people. And he said, no, John, that's not what I want you to talk about. He said, what I care about are cures. I want my city, my region to be engaged in finding cures for people. I have to tell you, I really puzzled over that quite a bit. I didn't really know what the mayor meant, and I didn't really know how I could bring that home to you. And then 2 or 3 weeks ago, I got a call from a friend of mine about her daughter named Jenny. Jenny is somebody that I watched from little tiny babyhood grow up and play with my daughter. And when she was in high school, she had a lot of interest in life science innovation, and I arranged for her to work as an intern in several of our biotechnology companies. And Jenny got very inspired about curing people, and she went on to medical school at Tufts and was serving her residency when things began to go wrong. And 2 weeks ago, she got one of the cruelest, most unfair diagnoses that I can possibly imagine. So, Mayor, I know now what you were talking about. Because every one of us who cares about somebody, who loves somebody, has had that experience that I've had of at that moment saying, doggone it, we have to find a cure. This cannot go on. I do not accept this. I want to find a cure. So today, this speech is a little bit dedicated to you, Mr. Mayor, and a little bit dedicated to my friend Jenny. So, what I want to talk about a little bit is just a few minutes about NEHI, because I think it's one of the most important things that we've done in Massachusetts to form this network and others like it. It's a key reason why cures and innovation happen as much as they do in the state of Massachusetts, in the region of Boston. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about where I think cures are occurring, where they're not occurring, and then maybe what you can do here in Scottsdale and personally about all of that. So the first thing I want to do, you heard that I've been a venture capitalist for 30 years, and that's true. I also have a personal history with cancer. So in my particular case, my mother died of breast cancer when I was 6 years old. One of the interesting things about the human brain is that it copes with tragedy, in my case, by not allowing me to have a single memory of her or of my life before the age of 7. Sort of an interesting phenomenon, but it speaks to me of whatever the pain was of losing your mother at that age. And then 8 years ago, I was myself diagnosed with a melanoma, and thanks to the skill of the surgeons at the Massachusetts General Hospital, I have passed my 5-year mark and now stand here before you as somebody who is cured of cancer. And so I've worked in the venture capital industry for 30 years. I've worked teaching for the last 12 years, and I've worked for 32 years across the entire world trying to help individuals, trying to help companies, trying to help regions figure out how we can create more cures. And that's what I'm going to try to bring forward to you today. So NEHI was actually created by the CEO of the Massachusetts General Hospital, I think still ranked the #1 hospital in the world, CEO of the Harvard Medical School, CEO of the local insurance company, and the CEO of one of the local biotechnology companies. And they were all working in their silos on their individual problems, much like the wonderful companies that you saw up here. And they said whether it's government policy or whether it's attracting the venture capital or whether it's just creating the infrastructure and the education that we need to produce the workers that we need, we actually have to pull together and form a network that is dedicated to healthcare innovation. And originally that network existed only in Boston, then it existed in the state, now it exists across the country, and before I'm done, it's going to exist across the world. What makes us special is that our network consists of members that are part of every piece of the healthcare ecosystem. So you'll see health plans, you'll see the professional services, the IT, the pharma guys, the hospital, the patient consumer groups, the employers in medical technology, and you'll see pharmacy. And you here in Scottsdale have no idea how lucky you are to have such a strong presence represented by CVS Health, one of the most progressive companies in America today. And without their CEO and CMO, Troy Brennan, CEO is Larry Merlo, CMO is Troy Brennan, these people are leading the way for the rest of us, and you are so fortunate to have such a strong presence of CVS here in your region, and they will definitely be part of the solution. How do our programs work? So we actually do research, whether it's on policies that governments can change to make things work better, or that hospitals can change to make patients work better, or that we can change in our IT system. And then we convene all of the players in a room, including the government, and we educate them about what they need to do and help them move forward to do that. And no, Mayor Lane, this is not something that you have to pay for out of the city budget. This is something that we go to these very fine foundations to support our work and actually generate the data that supports the positions that we're trying to advocate for. So our policy agenda is, first of all, just improving the delivery. I think you saw some fabulous examples of trying to get delivery out of the hospital, into the neighborhood, into the home, to where the patient lives. An enormous amount of the problem we have in healthcare today is just ensuring that people use the medicines that we have. We can effect many more cures of people that we love and care about if we can just get them to take their medicines properly. And as evidenced, CVS is actually one of the leaders in bringing, not so much inventing the technology, but in bringing the inventions and the innovations that are occurring around our country and focusing them on the individual patient. We have to change the way that we pay for things, because a lot of the things that are being invented that are so cool, they cost a lot of money. And we're going to have to figure out as a society how to pay for that innovation now when the benefits, just as you saw in that CVS slide, actually occur over an extended period of time. And we do care a lot about technology, and we really believe that cures come when you have actually a holistic approach to wellness, and that your community has a strong program advocating healthy lifestyles, healthy living, and taking care of illness when it pops up. So that's knee-high. So the next question I wanted to ask myself is, are we making progress? I was thinking about this mandate that I had now that I had figured out what the mayor wanted me to talk about, and I said, well, are we making progress? Is the world better now than it was before? Newspaper came out a couple of days after I made this slide and said that actually this last year we spent 17.5% of our GDP on healthcare. And people are increasingly worried, like, how much higher can it go? And I'm here to tell you, in our lifetimes, it's going to go a lot higher, because these are the kinds of things that we're going to want to spend our money on. It's going to be our health and our life and the quality of our life. But some of these new breakthrough drugs are costing a lot of unexpected dollars. It's created a lot of attention in the media and the politics about the cost of healthcare. It's definitely going to be an issue in the presidential campaign. And I guess I wanted, as this part of my talk, just to make a really simple point to you as you think about what we're spending, which is this is not an apples-to-apples comparison. We are getting, because we've invested this money, a lot more healthcare. And that is translating, first of all, into a lot more years of life, and it's translating into a lot more quality of life. So I just went very quickly into the government statistics. I came upon this slide, which says that in 1970, if you were a guy, you had a life expectancy of either 60 or about 67 years of age. And actually, if you extend this out, today, most of us, people like me, can expect to live into our 80s. So we're getting 20 years more life just because we've been spending this money. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. It's really a comparison of living to 60, living to 80. You know, which way do you want to go? Interestingly here, and I know I'm in a region where there are a lot of people with Hispanic heritage, when you look at the same data for Hispanics, they top out across all ethnic backgrounds. So the people who live the longest, male and female, actually turn out to be people with Hispanic backgrounds. I'm convinced it's either the music or the food, or in my case, what I've decided is it's the tequila, and so that's the way that I translated that. But here's the cancer that killed my mother. So if you look at the rate of incidence of this cancer, it's actually the same. It's more or less the same number of people, and it really doesn't matter what ethnic group you look at. It doesn't really matter what age you look at. Lots and lots and lots and lots of women come down with a diagnosis of breast cancer every year. But here's the wonderful news. Look at those death rates, heading straight down. So this turns out to be, Mr. Mayor, an area where we do have cures. There are going to be, or there were, I guess we're still in 2015, 231,840 cases of breast cancer diagnosed in the country. How they got that before we finished the year, I don't know, but they did. It's about 14% of all cancer cases, but they're not going to be 230,000 deaths. Only going to be about 40,000 deaths this year, only about 7% of all cancer deaths. And here's the part that I love. That's why I put that little graphic up there with all the people. 9 out of 10 of the women who get this diagnosis, and there are those women in my family too, are going to live. They're going to live. That is a cure. When you live for 5 years or longer, at least by the way we define things today, you are cured. If my mother had the same diagnosis that killed her in 1964, she would be alive today, and I would remember her. I'd like to talk a little bit about my friend Pete. Pete is the boyfriend of my mother-in-law. Pete's job is to keep mother-in-law happy. When mother-in-law is happy, wife is happy. Wife is happy, I'm happy. So Pete loves to go on cruise ships. They love to go to the casinos. Foxwood lives off these guys. They hit the restaurants. They love the New England Patriots on their way to their next Super Bowl. Thank you very much. And he loves to spend time with his family. So I remember a time about 10, 12 years ago when Pete wanted to take his own life. The reason he wanted to take his own life is because he couldn't do the things that he used to be able to do. And then he went to the hospital and he got not one, but 2 new artificial knees. And imagine my humiliation when we pushed the windsurfer out on the lake and the 80-something-year-old man all of a sudden hops back onto the windsurfer and sails away. So because of that very simple healthcare innovation of 2 new knees, he is actually living the lifestyle where this dude could windsurf better than I can. And so he, in addition to his artificial knees, he has numerous stents in his heart. There's probably not a vein or artery in his heart that's not held open with metal. His teeth, his hearing aids, his glasses. You know, whenever he goes anywhere, the litany is, did you take this? Did you remember this? Did you turn on your hearing aids? Do they have batteries? Are your teeth in? And he takes a lot of different pills. But Pete's a happy guy, right? So we do spend money on Pete. But Pete has a very high quality of life. He makes other people very happy, and he supports the economy. So innovation can also mean spare parts. It can mean just keeping Pete around. I won't talk about the little blue pill either, but the he did pull me aside one day and said, thank you guys for inventing that thing. I really like that. But So here's the cancer that could have killed me. So this is a really interesting cancer because if it does metastasize into your bloodstream, as you can see from the statistics up there, your odds are not good. So when you get the call from in this case it was a dermatologist that took the biopsy, it says you have this cancer, it is aggressive and it is malignant and we're going to be doing these surgeries. I sort of vaguely knew these statistics, which is if, in fact, they got this thing before it escaped into the rest of my body, I had a really, really great chance of standing in front of you today. But if I had been too late, until very, very recently, my odds were basically zero. Now, fortunately, as a result of new pharmaceuticals coming from both Bristol Myers Squibb and Merck, people who do have this unfortunate situation where their cancer has metastasized are now able to have some truly miraculous cures. And so if you go back to that feeling of, wow, this person I love or I care about has got this diagnosis and it's really, really bad. In the last couple of years, there have been some families where they've had that cure. Like they looked up and they wished or they prayed and it happened. And that is because these two companies brought these two drugs to market. The message that I wanted to give you with this slide is please go get checked. So I get checked every 90 days. You live in a state where, as far as I can tell, the sun shines every single day. In Boston, I don't have to worry about that as much. But here you do. And this very deadly cancer, and you can be in charge of your own cure if you show up and you get yourself checked. What was interesting about this is it was not the doctor who found the cancer on my arm. It was actually my wife. So we were kayaking along somewhere, and she looked over at my forearm, and she said, I don't like that. Go get that checked. I said, oh, it's just at the doctor. He looked at it. It was fine. She said, I don't care. You're important to me. You're going to go back to him and have him biopsy that. And thank goodness that she did. So one of the most important things you can do as a community when you want to promote cures is promote education about things that people can do in their own lives to take charge of their own health. And one of them is screening. And if you live in a state where the sun shines every day, every single person in your family ought to know something, a little something at least, about melanoma. So that was the good news. Here's the bad news. This, ladies and gentlemen, is mostly where I'm going to be spending the rest of my career, either as a venture capitalist or as an entrepreneur or as someone working to promote new cures. So pretty much anything having to do with the brain today is an unexplored frontier that we know very little about. In my 30-year career for Alzheimer's, despite trying with a number of different people, there are no new cures for Alzheimer's. There are no new cures for Parkinson's. There are no new cures for ALS. There hasn't really been an exciting new cure or method of treating depression since 1986 when Prozac came out. Schizophrenia, ditto. I don't have to talk to you in this state about the impact in your community of deaths from opioid addiction. We have an extraordinary need in our country to find new means of treating pain that are non-addictive, and of course the tragedy of autism. So in all of these areas, your work here is not yet done. I think you had fabulous companies coming up here talking to you about their innovation, but your work is not yet done. All of you will have family members who will be impacted by these diseases. And all of us as a country must work harder than we have worked before to find new cures. Here's how we're going to get them. So you actually had, and I was really pleased, a couple of great examples of precision medicine, of using the individual patient's genetic profile to guide therapy. So if you think about it, when my mother was diagnosed in 1964, they just said she had breast cancer. I don't know of a hospital, I'm sure that's not true in Health Honors, where you go to someone and you say you have breast cancer. You say you have a lesion of the breast characterized by the following genetic molecular profile. So today women are bucketed into at least 9 different categories, triple negative, triple positive, or some mix of different receptors. And their therapy in every hospital in America is today predicated upon that genetic profile. So what I can tell you about some of those brain diseases is that this is not a single bug that causes Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. There's about 59 different ways, it turns out, that we found so far that you could become demented as you get older. I'm working on all of them. But the point is, the same techniques that we used in precision medicine to make these cures happen in cancer, we're doing it now. We're taking the same approach, and we're trying to genetically profile people, their brains, or their diseases in their brains, so that we can understand, again, just as we have with breast cancer, the different buckets of types of patients, and begin developing therapies that are precision-directed towards them. The immune system modulators are, in fact, the drugs that I described from Merck or Bristol-Myers Squibb, and what these do is simply sort of take the brake off your immune system. Our body is a marvelous balance of things that attack foreign bodies and things that know, hey, that's okay, don't attack that. And it's this really interesting system of checks and balances. If you have too much immune system activity in your body, you get diseases that are called autoimmune diseases, things like rheumatoid arthritis or lupus. But what we've discovered with cancer patients is that we can take the brakes off the immune system for patients that we know are in trouble, and at least in 30 or 40% of the cases, we've had some remarkable cures from these immune system modulators. And now the race is on to try to figure out which patients are going to respond, which ones are not, and how can we invent new ones. Cell-based therapies involve taking some of your cells out of your body, taking them off and processing them and enriching them with some parts of the immune system that are specifically directed to your type of cancer, and then infusing them back in your body. Again, at least in mice and rats, it looks really good, and the early results in patients are really exciting. You've read a lot about stem cells. You're going to be reading a lot more about stem cells in the years ahead. Today, they're used more as drug discovery tools. So companies that I'm involved with take stem cells from patients who have autism or ALS, just to pick two examples, and they grow up little tiny neuronal networks. Think of them as very primitive little brains, but they actually represent the brains of those individual patients. And then we can interrogate those little dishes of brains with different kinds of drugs to see if, in fact, we can discover things that would be used to treat these brain diseases. And of course, because I can actually take a skin sample from any one of you, take it back to one of my friends in Boston, and we can take your skin and we can take one of those cells, we can bring it all the way back to a stem cell. Once we have it as a stem cell today, we can program it to make different body parts. So in the future, you are looking at a world in which we will make that kidney, make that liver, make that lung, make that body part that you need in order to cure you of something that is causing your disease. Ultimately, when you think about, in my case, our old Toyota that my son is still driving, he's trying to get it to 200,000 miles, and we keep changing out certain parts, new tires, new air filter, new this or that. We're all living a longer and longer time. And at least one source of successful investments I've made has just been in the spare parts to replace the things that just wear out over time. So stem cells are going to be very important there. So gene therapy is a topic. It's actually, I helped create the first gene therapy company back in 1988. And all we learned was how much we didn't know. But in 30 years, we've learned an awful lot. And one of the things we've learned is that if we're going to defeat muscular dystrophy or other diseases where it's basically each cell in the body is affected by this genetic defect, without going back and changing the underlying genetic structure, we actually have to use a viral vector and infect every single gene, every single cell in your body with a better version of a genome that makes, in this case, the protein that lets these boys grow up and have normal lives. So those gene therapy trials are now happening all across the United States, and I think you're going to see the first approvals for the first gene therapy drugs in the next couple of years. And then finally, something that man is capable of inventing as great as nuclear power in its potential and as great as nuclear power and its potential to do harm has been invented. It does exist and it does work. And that is the ability to go into an embryo and to edit the genes of that embryo. So we know an awful lot now about which genes, when they're not arranged in a certain way, lead to certain diseases. Technique was invented simultaneously at the University of California, Berkeley, and out in Boston, called CRISPR-Cas9, which can literally go in and edit that genome. So at first people thought, well, this is really terrific. We're going to be able to take this Duchenne's muscular dystrophy boy. You actually know a lot about that gene, or Angela Jolie's BRCA1 gene, and we'll just fix it. We can fix it while they're still in utero. What's wrong with that? What if you decided that, you didn't like red hair, you wanted black hair? We can change that too. Kid is too short, well, we can make him taller. So as you can see, the ethical and moral implications of this technology are at least as profound as nuclear power. They get fundamentally as what are we as human beings? And literally this week, there has been a gathering of the top scientists of the United States of America, China, and Europe, and they are forging an agreement amongst themselves that they will put a moratorium on the development of this technology in human beings for at least a little while until we sort out what are the rules going to be for doing this. Because you could imagine that in the right hands, it's a tremendous technology for good. It is, Marilyn, the ultimate source of cures, because you can fix somebody so that not only do they grow up perfectly normal, but their children and their children's children will carry that same gene fix all the way through. So this is really, these suite of technologies are going to be the basis of the cures going forward. If you are having this event in the next 5 or 10 years, you will be talking about all of them. And if you want to be a place where cures occur, it's going to have to be using many of these things to go after those diseases that I talked about. Here is the innovation cycle. Christian in particular wanted me to talk about money. And so this is the part of the talk that talks about money. Research is principally coming from the US government. Little bit comes from the states. Most of the discovery actually does occur in our research institutions around the country. The really tricky part and the part you need to work on here in Scottsdale that we work very hard on in Boston is called translation, which is taking the discovery out of the lab and creating a company or a project around it that actually develops a product. The development, it sounds like something that you are pretty good at here, which is actually doing the clinical trials of the product to see if it works, and there's a standard of care. So if you're going to do this in Scottsdale, if you're going to attract people like me to come into your community and invest in your companies, you are going to need to produce a highly educated workforce that understands not just at the PhD level how to work these technologies, but at the bachelor level or even the high school graduate level, there are many, many, many positions in companies and in hospitals that with a high school degree and 1 or 2 years of training can make you a hugely value-adding worker. Think of all the ultrasound techs, MRI techs, lab techs that infiltrate our system. In Boston, people pay a lot of attention to Harvard and MIT, but they do not pay enough attention to the fact that we have phenomenal nursing schools. We take kids who don't have high school degrees and we teach them how to be our ultrasound techs or our MRI techs or our X-ray techs. So there is a role for everybody in our healthcare system. The networks I've talked about, I'll talk about again. In Boston and in San Francisco, the places that you're fundamentally competing about, the people at the top have formed formal and informal networks, and they get together and they talk, and they go to the mayor not as individuals, they go to the governor not as individuals, they go as a community, and they say, we need this to change, and they typically get a lot of attention. You need entrepreneurs. I'm going to come back to that one more time. You obviously need risk capital. And you need leadership. But if you get this cycle to work, you get the high-paying jobs, the healthy community, the economic growth, and yes, you do get cures. What drives this money cycle? Well, first of all, it's a lot of money. I was just looking up my favorite venture capital statistics, and just in the last quarter, there was $3 billion invested by people like me in the life sciences sector alone. If you look at the statistics, that's about 17% of all formal venture capital. Venture firms have, in fact, invested almost $50 billion as a group in the United States, but less than 20% of that actually goes to the life sciences. But the last bullet is the most important. These figures do not include investments by angel investors. So I personally, in addition to managing other people's money, have somewhere between 15 and 20 personal investments in startup life science companies, almost all of them in the Boston area. And with me are lots of other people that look just like me. They're people who've either made their money in healthcare or made their money as being entrepreneurs. They want to give back to the community. And they are a much larger source, it turns out, of the seed startup capital than the venture community, which puts in a lot of numbers, but if you actually looked at the number of companies underlying all that money, it's pretty small. And if you want to understand where a lot of the companies, at least in my hometown, come from, they start with these angel investors. We do also have a state fund that supports our companies. The state actually doesn't get to decide how to give out the money. They hired a bunch of venture capitalists who work for them for free, and we help them allocate the money. And then finally, the strategic corporate venture funds are critically important. What drives all of this money cycle is actually policy made mostly by governments, and that includes the research spending policy, the FDA policies, the drug prices, patent law policies. All of these things include the total amount of money that gets spent. How you get it into Scottsdale is going to be when people perceive, like me, that this is an area they can fly into and meet multiple companies that they would like to invest in. So what can Scottsdale do? Well, the first thing and the most important thing, it's why I'm here from NEHI, is to form leadership networks. I cannot emphasize this enough. How many times in how many venues the leaders of the hospitals, of the companies, of the money, the venture capitalists get together in a room and say, what's working, what's not? What can I do for you? What can you do for me? How can we help each other? Secondly, I'd like you to really focus on educating your workforce across all of the health professions, nurses, techs, obviously the molecular biologists, the geneticists, but there's actually a role for everybody in your community in this healthcare economy. You're going to have to attract and support entrepreneurs, and quite honestly, that's going to make you very uncomfortable at times. Entrepreneurs are not nice people. They are not. They're very difficult to work with. They are change agents. They are people who fundamentally look at this and reject it. They say, no, things are not right. No, I don't agree that everything is rosy. I want to change it. And change is hard. Just ask Theranos. They'll give you, it's really, really hard to be disruptive. You make a lot more enemies than friends. If you're going to do this, you have to be a place where educated and successful people want to live. As based on what I've seen, you have a fantastic quality of life here. And you will have to just keep building on that to be a place where not only people who want to recreate, but highly educated people feel that they also have a place to live, promote healthy lifestyles, patient engagement. And then finally, I think I've gotten this message across by some of the people in front of me, you're going to have to teach and discuss genomics in your community, because as individuals or as a community, you will have to understand this. And quite honestly, reading about it in the newspaper, most of what you read is wrong. They tend to sort of simplify it, and it's a very complicated subject because we tend to think that there's a normal and an abnormal. But if you look at this room, we're all different. So who of us gets to be the normal one, and then everybody else is abnormal? Is it the mayor? Is like he the normal guy? And we're all like, if you're one standard deviation away from the mayor, then you're not normal? What is normal? Well, it turns out we're 6 billion different individuals. All of us work slightly differently. And so when you hear people say, we're going to have to analyze your genome and figure it out, they've got it right. So that's already happening here, and my plea to you is pay attention to that, and whether you're supporting the company or supporting it in your family or in your community. Just give you one more example of that. Because my mother died when she did, both of my daughters didn't have their whole genome sequenced, but there are 28 key genes that if you have them put you at a very high risk for breast cancer. So we actually had them sequenced, and then we waited until the envelope came. Fortunately, it was good news, but if they had had a different outcome, we would be managing their health care differently. Perhaps not as extreme as Angelina Jolie, but they would start their mammograms like at 25 or 30. We'd be paying a lot of attention to them to make sure that we caught it early. So teaching and discussing genomics in your own family and in your community is a key part of finding a cure. And I just want to come back one more time to the entrepreneur thing. When I first did this slide, I had dozens of people that I've worked with, all of whom came from outside our country, and all of whom have made enormous contributions to our country. So in Boston, we are incredibly pro-immigration. We could not run our economy without it. And it's people like Michael, Eric, Andre, or Akshay who, in fact, come to our area to study or to work, stay, and start companies. In the case of Eric, he was kicked out of Austria when he was 8 or 9, came to the United States. He's won the Nobel Prize for figuring out how memory works in the brain, started 2 companies that it was my honor to be the chairman of. But I could tell you a story. Michael came from South Africa, Eric from Austria, Andre from Mexico, Akshay from Canada, actually, and many, many, many more. And part of building the Cures Corridor is going to be convincing people that Scottsdale is a place where people like this want to live, want to raise their families, want to start their companies, want to be part of this really amazing adventure that you've started out on. So finally, what can you do? Well, first of all, you have to get engaged in your own health. I think there were some great examples of how that can happen. But you have to pay attention and understand that you are responsible for where you are, and if you want something to change, you will have to change it. The second thing I have to tell you is not so much fun, it's exercise. So about 14 years ago, I did a company out in San Diego with a very famous professor who had discovered the way that brains grow new brain cells. So it turns out, any of you who were taught that all your brain cells are formed when you're young, and then that's it. And if you have as much tequila as I had as a kid, like you were, like, did you kill them all? Turns out that's wrong. Turns out every day until the rest of your life, you do, perhaps at a reduced rate, create new brain cells in your brain. And when you're injured or when you're taking a drug for depression, the way that it works is it actually stimulates the growth of new brain cells. So this professor had wired up a bunch of mice and rats, and he had looked at all the different ways that you can stimulate the growth of brain cells as a treatment for depression. So, he tested food, he tested chocolate, he got this huge grant from Mars, and he really wanted to prove that chocolate was the way to go. He looked at high social environments, if you really had a very active sexual life, did that help? He basically checked out everything. And unfortunately, what proved, at least in mice, is that if you put an exercise wheel in their cage, it beats every other thing they can do. So this exercise thing that you heard about, all of us being runners, it's not just about looking good, and it's not just about, well, maybe this will help me avoid diabetes. It actually turns out that the single best thing you can do for the health of your brain, which is the thing that I'm working on, is exercise. So please go out and exercise. Last time I looked, Scottsdale has an ideal infrastructure to go exercise and play. I've talked about preventive care. I've talked about genomics. And the last thing is evidenced by your presence listening to me today, to embrace and support innovation and the people who produce it. And so if you are business people, that means that you do need to go out and support these companies as angel investors. You do need to help them make connections. And you do need to work with the mayor to recruit the next set of entrepreneurs and innovators to come into a community and give them the same unbelievably warm welcome and and just really exciting presentation that I received from all of you. So thank you for listening and your attention. I'm really excited to see this Cures Corridor develop over the years ahead. I really hope that in addition to the amazing work that you're doing in cancer and some of these other areas, that you also develop cures in the areas that we need the most, which I've outlined. And thank you again for your attention and support. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so very much, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure to have you here, and just a wonderful presentation, and certainly appreciate all the compliments about our fine city and the things that we're attempting to do here with the Cure Corridor and your endorsement there of that mission. So thanks so very much. And really, on behalf of all of the speakers who have been with us today, and Mr. Fleming as well, please let's give another round of applause. I'd like to once again thank our sponsors. Again, this is what made it all possible, and we very much appreciate their participation on that level as well. I'd ask that you go to ScottsdaleCureCorridor.com if you need any additional information or you want to see some follow-up on this, this meeting here today. So please go ahead and do that. And I just wish, in closing, wish you all the very best for the rest of your day and hope to see you here again next year.